right. So thank you for waiting, guys. We are Chairman down today, as you can see. So we are winging it as best we can right now. Hey Grant.
What's up, Brian?
Hey. Hey there. Yeah. So you want to take over from here, and we'll dive into this topic.
Absolutely. So basically today we wanted to talk about some of the top questions that we get around rig building. Surprise, surprise, they tend to be quite repetitive. And that is not a complaint by any means. I take that as a way or a note that we can do a better job explaining things and creating content around this type of stuff. And so we basically are going to go through some of these top questions. I have a few, Brian, that I've already written down.
Yeah.
And so I figured that maybe we could start with one of mine, then we could go to one of your questions, one of mine, so on and so forth. We'll just tag team this thing right through till the end. And if people have questions as we're going, and you are watching as we live stream this, you can also put this in the chat. And so we can try and get to some of those questions as well. So that's kind of the idea behind the episode today. And so the first thing that I have, before I get to the first question I have, I forgot. We have a Facebook group. This is an incredible group of people, Chairmen of the Boards on Facebook. And we basically just nerd out about guitar gear, questions, setups, problems, troubleshooting things that come up. There's a great community of people there. I think we are well over 2,000 people now that are all passionate about pedalboards. And some of the advice there is awesome from the contributors, the people in there. And so check us out there on Facebook if you have any pedalboard questions. That's a great place to do it. As well, we are going to just now get into some of these questions. So the first one, I thought about Brian when I basically wrote this down. If there is a cleaner cable channel out there, I have yet to find it unless it's on Omilion's pedalboards. And one of the questions I get, of which I have a few tips and tricks, but Brian, I'll take your advice over mine in this area any day, is how do you actually get a clean cable run on a pedalboard? It's aesthetically pleasing, yes. There is mixed reactions. There are mixed reactions online here of if this is actually practical or if it's just great for Instagram. I think it's a little bit of both. I think there are some benefits to having clean cable channels, and I think it also looks great. I think it shows, one of the things that people are passionate about as far as their pedal boards, but also there's some practicalities to it. So if someone was to come to you, Brian, they have a pedal board, maybe it's a couple rows of pedals with or without a switcher, your pick. What kind of advice, what kind of questions are you asking to help them do their own clean cable channels? Not you, but them do their own clean cable channels. What are kind of some of the things you've figured out along the way?
Yeah, typically, like when it comes to it, like the cleanest is plotting out the setup. And I do apologize for my voice going out. It has been allergy season galore down here in Texas, so it has not been the kindest, so do bear with me. But yeah, for like clean cable channels, it really comes down to the plotting. I wouldn't say a clean cable channel is like the most dire need thing you have to have for a setup, especially because you get the comment a lot of times, it's like, oh, I changed my setup too much to do that kind of stuff, which I do agree with. It's one of those things that it's just one of those
recording in progress.
It's just one of those things that you can do if you're not going to change up, or if you're going to change up a couple pedals here and there. It's pretty easy, but yeah, it's all about the layout, plotting. Okay, well, it's going to go from here to here to here, then back, instead of going like here to here to here. It's like you want to cut down as much back and forth as possible, keep it as streamlined as possible, then run the cable run to a patch box or an amp sim, and then make sure you're accounting for the cable coming back and then the cable going back the opposite direction. There's so many little things that you can do to help with cable management, as how much cable you're using. That's a big thing too, because a lot of people will be like, oh my gosh, I used up so much cable, or I stretched it or whatever and busted the cable, and that kind of stuff that's the kind of stuff that we like to stay away from.
Of course. And one of the things that I've noticed as well as kind of, let's say, a beginner's guide to running clean cable channels, planning, absolutely. You got to, like you said, you got to be able to plan this stuff out. And in the beginning, you're just going to do the best you can, because you are going to, I don't know if you still find better ways of doing things, Brian, like thousands of rigs in, but especially early on, the first few rigs, you're going to realize, oh, next time I should do this. And the only way you can do that is by building rigs. Yeah. So I would say the best thing you can do to learn clean cable channels is just build more rigs. But for the first rig, as a general rule of thumb, I would say try and leave yourself a little bit more space between on the cable highways, kind of where the bulk of the cable is going to run. Don't try and pack it all within half an inch. And this is one of the biggest mistakes, is people in the planning phase, they try and fit as many pedals onto the board as they can. And then the cable channels, the cables themselves even, are an afterthought. It's like, oh, now I've put as many pedals on here as I can, but I didn't actually plan out any space for cable channels.
Exactly.
And so leaving yourself a bit of extra space. Maybe you have a 2-row pedal board, like I said, in between row 1, the front row, and row 2, the back row. Try and leave yourself, if you can, 2 inches of space, 2 distinct cable runs. If you do that, immediately your cable channels are going to get better, just by way of the fact that you left the space for them. Not even talking about how to run the cables, just the fact that you left the space, your cable channels will be better because of it.
Yeah.
As well, another rule of thumb I kind of like to use is, where possible, the longest cable tends to go lower on the cable channel, closer to the pedal board, and then the shorter ones kind of come into the channel and then break off the top of the channel. And if you can do that as well, and this doesn't apply to every single cable, but as a general rule of thumb, this will help a lot. And then I remember way back in the day when me and Mikey were running Goodwood, he was doing the setups and I was making the cables and the junctions. And in the beginning, we pre-made every cable before it was installed on the board. So we would measure out the cable, cut it to the best of our ability, like we'd mock up where it was going to run in the cable channels, and then we'd solder on both plugs, and then we'd install it into the cable channel, which is so much easier to solder. But the cable channels, they were average at best. And then I remember doing a couple of builds myself, and I remember hearing, some people would solder one end on, leave extra cable, run the cable channel, and like tie it down. Even if it was loosely, they would tie it down as if it was going to, end up in the real thing. And then they'd solder at the pedal. Yeah. And instantly, overnight, the cable channels looked way better because of doing it that way. Harder to solder because you have to solder on the pedal board. But the results were so much better. Yeah. And I don't know if you do that approach, Brian, but that was for me a big step forward right away, and a stepping off point from where I could then build even further on the cable channels from that point on.
Yeah. I think, excuse me, I think a lot of times people are like, oh, I want to use as minimum as cabling as possible. It's like when you're ordering supplies, you're like, you order the amount of connectors, maybe plus one, just in case there's a dead one. But like with cable, it's not expensive. And someone even said, I think Barry said, we can treat cable like it's cheap because it is, when using extra cable to make sure you can channel and still have enough to the end, which I think is that is a great point, because a lot of this cable is less than $1 a foot. I mean, some of them, I know, obviously, buy it in bulk, you get a much better price. But like, if you're having to buy 50 feet, it doesn't hurt to have 100 feet or have 75 feet with you, because that extra, first of all, you think you're saving the money, but then you need it. And then you end up paying more because you have to pay for shipping.
Shipping is more than the cable.
Yes. It's like, oh my gosh, I need 10 more feet. Okay, shipping from Redco or from Creation or from Ogami is $29.99. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is more than the cable. I mean,
for like $9 worth of cable.
Oh my gosh. And you can't just Amazon it, because Amazon doesn't have like they have you. I've done it in the past. They have them in like the big spools, but like that's thousands of feet, and I don't need that for the 9 extra feet or 9 extra inches that I need. So yeah, it's one of those you always think. Someone says you can always use it later. I had a client who did that. He sent in, I think it was like 200 feet, and there were MIDI. It was MIDI audio, 2319 and 25 or 2314. And DC cable. He sent in all this. So it was like this huge Pelican case. And I was like, hey, you sent me too much. He goes, oh, it's okay. Just send back what's left. I always just use up this massive roll of stuff that I got because it's cheaper than having to rebuy it. And I'm like, I think that's such a great point. When you go approach, if you order 25 extra connectors, that gets pricey. Like that can get pretty expensive. So I would definitely say cable is a little bit different.
And this is a common question in this realm from 09 Records. I feel like you comment so much, I should know your name, but thank you for the question. Same with Hunty Boo in YouTube here. But is there a strict rule around running separately DC power cables and audio, and let's throw in MIDI and expression TRS cables, versus running them together? And are there any issues that we need to be aware of or worry about at that point? Do you have any thoughts on this?
I do. I think everyone has their own opinion. I would say years ago, you would always run audio and power separately because the type of power cables that they were running and the type of connectors and the type of audio cabling was different. I think the connectors were different, the isolation. I think a lot of that stuff was different. So, I do my best. If you see a lot of the boards, if I have the space, I will separate them. I mean, it may look like the Grand Canyon at first, but then once you start putting in all those anchor squares, it gets full really quick, and you start to see, you have all these cable runs. People will knock it. It's pretty easy to troubleshoot when they're all separated. I will say that. But I'll never do like an AC run. I get the occasional looms from people. Like I'm building one for Fergie's guitar player. He were doing a build and he wanted a super long loom, which is super fun, but it's AC'd with instrument cable for like a loom. So like typically
asking for trouble.
Yeah. So I typically like I'll stay away from it unless they're really, really want it. But on a pedal board, especially with pedals and stuff, like the AC run, you'll see on the new Vertex stuff can go underneath the board. That kind of stuff stays separate. If it is on a flat board, it gets as channeled as much as possible, down the backside or on the lip or whatever, so it stays away from those instrument cable runs. Because I would say an audio loom, 1/4 inch and XLR, the cable, especially because an audio loom, you're probably using instrument cable, so it's it's a thicker cable. Can survive, but I feel like on a pedal board you might cause a little bit more noise. I found more noise in a pedal board by stacking the compressor on top of a junction or on top of a power supply. Like you get more noise out of that than I feel you do out of maybe running the AC close by. When it comes to MIDI and that kind of stuff and TRS, I don't typically have an issue running those together. I do a lot of MIDI and TRS stuff based like together and stuff, and I've never had issues. But what about you? I've been talking too much, so what about you?
Yeah, so no, you're good. So unbalanced cable behaves more like an antenna than anything else, and so it loves to pick up, especially out of the guitar.
Yeah,
it loves to pick up extra noise. And when you get into the board, DC, not going to be a problem for you, especially if you're using half decent cable. But AC, you really do want to try and run that separately. Basically, just keep it as far away, underneath or on top of the board, as far away from audio as you can. And if you have to cross at 90 degrees for AC power. But DC, you're pretty good to go as far as sharing channels. Same goes for MIDI, TRS. And so that would be kind of the general rule. So even practically speaking, what does that actually mean on a pedal board? is if you have a pedal board with an AC input on the side, like an angled board that you can plug in on the side, and then that feeds a AC cable to a power supply. Try and just keep that AC run as short as you can. The AC cable coming into the board, try and keep it away or peeling away from your audio lines if you can, like your guitar input cable. Try not to run those in parallel for any significant amount of distance. Looms are a bit of an issue when it comes to AC power. You can get away from it. The problem gets worse and worse the more current that AC cable is drawing. And so that's another thing to be aware of as well. You might have a little bit less of an issue on a small board with low current pedals than you would on a big board with a lot more current running through them. So yeah, just things to be aware of. But AC is kind of can be our enemy when it comes to this. And as far as stacking the pedals on another, that depends on the makeup. So there's some horrible issues out there with stacking that you'll come across. I remember it was one of the really old Chalks power supplies, and I've had this with other power supplies as well, but it wasn't shielded in the same way that I guess it must not have been a steel enclosure, but I remember putting a pedal on top of it, and I think this was for one of Adzy's rigs, maybe a bass rig, and put a pedal on top of it. Everything tested fine, like individually, cables were good. I spent hours trying to figure out why this was an issue, knowing that I'd stacked pedals on other Chalks power supplies in the past, no issues. So it's not the power supply. Then, after a lot of research and looking into things, pulled the pedal that was, while it was plugged in, while it was powered, while audio was running through it, just pulled it up off the power supply, and the noise went away. Put it back on top of the power supply, the noise came back in. And I was like, oh, this. So then I emailed Chalks, like, yeah, you can't do it on this particular power supply. I think it might have been maybe an Atom or something. It was one of their smaller old version power supplies. And yeah, so there are all sorts of little things like this that I would say if you're going to get into rig building your own pedal board, you need to accept, not be okay with, you need to accept the fact that you are going to have some unbelievably frustrating long nights, probably the day before a gig, because we tend to do that, guitar players. We tend to I can set this up no problem before the gig tomorrow. And sure enough, we run into issues like this, and they're just random little issues that you never saw coming. But then you learn some really valuable lessons, I think, as well along the way. So there's a lot that goes into the question of clean cable runs, and a lot of things that can come up along the way. But I think in my mind, the biggest thing you can do is actually plan for cable runs, leaving space on your board for the cable runs. I think is one of the best things you can do. So the chat saying literally happened to me with Easter services this year. Exactly.
Oh no.
I've been there more than once. You'd think I would have learned my lesson, but I didn't. I'm a slow learner. I've done the same thing. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on this, Brian, and then I'll throw it to you for maybe a common question you get after that. But I recently posted a rig that we did. I think Tyler built it actually in the Ohio shop, and he built a rig. It looked awesome. He did such a good job, and I posted it, and it was like a big cable channel, pedals underneath a riser, pedals on top of the riser. I would say it was a medium to medium-ish board. Like it wasn't the biggest thing we've ever done, but it got so much hate, and it was a beautiful rig, but it got a lot of hate. It was with the G3. It's a recent post. Now I'm blanking on the main pedal, the purple pedal underneath the riser.
Is it this one?
Sorry. Yeah, that one. And so basically what happened with this is people were basically hating on the fact that it was a big board, hating on the fact that there were cable channels, and basically saying like, yeah, it's a big issue, or it looks great until you have to troubleshoot it, which is a fair point with cable channels. But my argument here is not to convince everyone that you should put huge fat cable channels on your board. That's not what I'm trying to do. My argument here, though, is cables break when they're moved, when they're bent back and forth, when they are pulled on, when they're tripped on, when the solder joints receive stress. Cables don't break when they stay in one position.
Thank you.
And that's where a cable channel, yes, if you have to rip it apart, total pain. Agreed. But if your board isn't getting ripped apart and the cables are going to be static, permanent install cables, they will be there for decades. They are going to be there for ages. So that's where if you're someone that is changing pedals every week and you're ripping your board apart because you love it, like you love trying new things and you're always changing pedals and it's more than swapping one pedal out here and there, you should not pay someone a couple $1,000s to set up your board. If you're someone that is going on tour and needs something reliable and you like the idea of someone else doing it for you and getting input, yeah, maybe you might want to get someone to look at it, or you might do it yourself, which is great. That's why we have this show. Do it yourself.
Exactly.
But I just think it's funny that there's a lot of strong opinions on this that I think, and there's some valid points in there, but I think it's not as clear as people might like to make it seem. And also in the chat, Hunty again, keeping it away from TSA, 100%.
100%.
I think we both set up boards, Brian, where it's like on tour number 1, it gets flown and there's a grumpy TSA agent that decides to undo the 30 plus hours of work that's been put into this pedal board in 10 minutes or less.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, it's for, I think like seeing that board, first of all, the cable channel from the G3 up to the bridge, stunning. It's beautiful.
He did a good job.
It's great build. Do you know what cable that was? It looks thick. Is it?
We use 2314 as standard, and then it would be 2552, so balanced XLR.
Yeah.
That would be the main two in there, and then obviously 2528, the dual mono cable.
Got it.
Those are the main cables we use for everything.
Yeah, that's the same. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, people will knock that kind of stuff, and they'll talk about, oh, too much cable, too much that, or whatever, but it's just like you said. Like, you know, we'll get the crap about too many anchors or too many zip ties or whatever, especially if you post it in like Pedalboard 101 on Facebook or something. Like it used to be like Pedalboards of Doom, and then I got kicked out of that one for some reason.
Did you?
I did. The owner wasn't happy. He thought I was self-promoting.
Did you
but
post
I really
a million
wasn't.
times?
I really didn't. I was like less than a million times, but
okay.
No, it was definitely, you know, you'll get the people that won't understand it. It's the same thing with like my Quad Cortex mini board that I have. Some people just don't understand the little bit more compact, the little more flexibility, and it's getting like the comments like, oh, you should have just done this. Oh, you just should have done that. And then like as respectfully as possible, like I'm just like, hey, that's why I made a 27-minute video on YouTube explaining why I did this route. So like the same thing with like a switching system. It's like when those cables are locked down from point A, say A to Z, everything in between is locked down and tight, and then you get to that final pedal and you have those cables loose. Like that's where you're troubleshooting. You're troubleshooting at the pedal. You're troubleshooting at the switcher. You're not troubleshooting in the middle of the board at that one. Oh, I got to clip up every single zip tie. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Like I've had people that they will just, you know, keyboard warriors. COVID brought out keyboard warriors out of everyone. They can just, you know, type whatever they want. And I'm just like, the logic doesn't make sense, but to each their own type of thing. So I definitely think that kind of stuff is really like, it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. I really think there are some people that will use it. Some people are like, no, I'm too old school for that, or I change my pedals too often. So it's just one of those things. And plus, when you have everything tied down and everything is labeled, it's so easy to track down. You see, it's usually just a solder joint, which
labeling
is a really good point. It's just like, label it, check the solder joint, and a lot of times it's like, I'm not going to rip up that cable. I'm just going to unscrew it really quick, look at it, and you're in a tight spot. You get a piece of gaff tape and you shove it in the cap and you screw it back down so that joint doesn't move, and you freaking keep playing. Like, I have done that kind of stuff.
Solderless that isn't solderless.
The most solderless soldered cable ever. And like, I've had to do stuff like that where you've literally had to tape it down just to get through playing or whatever. And it worked. It did the job.
I've never been there.
Yeah, I mean, my new board, hopefully, if I have an issue on my new board, it's like 3 connections, so I'd be disappointed in myself. But yeah, I definitely think that kind of stuff is good. It's just not for everyone.
Yeah. The thing that whenever I see these comments, the thing that comes to mind is like, oh, I love seeing people that have fully restored and decked out like a vintage Mustang as
yeah.
far as a muscle car, not
Yeah.
the guitar. Like that is the most impractical thing for me personally in my lifestyle. I would never in
Yeah.
a million years do it, but man, it looks awesome.
Yep.
Good on you for spending tens of thousands of dollars on something that you didn't need to spend tens of thousands of dollars on. But it's their choice.
Definitely.
It's their thing. It's what they're into. And I think it kind of applies to pedal boards.
Well-
you don't need to do all this stuff, but you can. And if it's your thing.
Like one of my clients, his name is Mike Stringer with the band Spirit Box. I've done 2 boards for him, and I think he uses both boards together in conjunction with his Fractal. And Premiere did an amazing video on it. They talked through all the sounds in the boards, but like the boards together is like 70 something inches. Like it's a massive. It fills his entire platform because he's on like a little riser that he can go step up on. It fills the whole thing. The type of comments people are like, oh, that's impractical. Oh, that's too big and stuff. And it's just like, man, when you're at that level and you're touring and you have these massive stages, like, why not? It's like a kid, it's like a kid going into a Lego store or whatever. I say candy shop, but you can say a Lego store. And like, the sky's the limit and you're buying everything or you're grabbing all the stuff and you're just like, you have all these options around you, and someone for him, it just like made the most sense. So, especially in that circumstance, heck yeah, I'm going to be running a massive rack with all this stuff. Like, do I need it? No. But is it fun? Heck yeah, it is. So like the same kind of stuff can apply to this switcher stuff. So,
Yeah.
I do have a question. Actually, I don't. Mike Olson does.
Oh, hey, Mike.
He messaged me because he's like, I'm not joining today, but I had this question. So bear with me as I can talk through this without coughing. It's a USB ground loop issue. It says, has anyone heard of static ground loops or surges from a USB connection causing pedal problems? He has 2 digital pedals that have been acting up intermittently for about a year, and they freeze up. He's tried ChatGPT. Does it seem like something could cause that? Have you ever experienced stuff like that?
We were chatting about this last week.
Okay, great. I'm glad. I was gone last week. I had a family pass, so I was out. I was home with my family for that.
Yeah, we were chatting last week about it and came to the conclusion that it seems like it's less of a USB issue and more of a pedal related issue.
That makes sense.
Whether it's a one-off or it's with that line of pedals, we're not sure because don't have enough pieces of duplicate gear to test.
Yeah.
But I will say on this, and I'm sure you have some experience here, that if you ever connect a USB to a pedal while you're passing audio through it, and it's not designed for that exact purpose, assume you're going to be adding noise to your rig. And then when it happens, you can start troubleshooting. But I think a lot of people think I'll connect all of the USB, outs from all these pedals to a USB hub. And then from that hub to my computer, I'll leave it always plugged in. And then it's updating is no problem. Connecting to Nixie, no problem. All this stuff. And then they run into just crazy amounts of noise. And I think that we've talked about this multiple times on this show, kind of little dips into this, dipping our toes into making comments that this is a problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
But currently it's not that easy to do. There's a few little workarounds you can try, but there's no great solutions that I'm aware of. In the chat, you guys might have something here, but I'm not too sure on this one yet.
Yeah.
The best way forward.
No, yeah, I would typically say if you're having like those types of issues, a lot of times I just, obviously you guys have already chatted about this. My 2 cents would be like, hey, is it connected to a computer? Is it sending a bunch of data? Like that kind of stuff can cause ground issues, especially like I've done it with the RGM switcher. We talked about this years ago. Things that you learn in the beginning stages of building pedal boards that you find out at 5 a.m. when you're bashing your head with a mallet.
There it is.
And you're just like, what the heck is that ground noise? Why can't I find it? I've tested every pedal. And you find out you left that USB-C cable plugged into your computer. It's like stuff like that can cause it. And I typically am not the person to say, hey, go get a USB MIDI hub and connect all your pedals with USB-C so you have one data spot to plug into. Because not every USB station thing, I have one sitting around here. I don't know where. It's like this kind of stuff. Like, Like, not all of these are equipped.
USB hubs.
Yeah, USB hubs are equipped to handle all of those stuff and all that data. Say you're running 2 Tone X's and you're doing a Morning Star or you're doing a gig rig or whatever. A gig rig doesn't do USB, but like all these pedals that can do USB H9, neural DSP, like that's a lot of data going down this one USB-C cable. So I'm typically like, man, it's not something you're going to plug into every single day. So like, just directly plug into that one thing. I just don't think the technology is there enough to feel like it's isolated enough. But I also agree, it could definitely be a pedal issue. So.
Yeah. So lots of fun little lessons. I like to think that I have one gray hair in my beard for every stressful event that has happened at Goodwood Audio over the years, and there are plenty. And it's basically just, are you going to figure out how to solve it or not? Are you going to stick with this thing or what are you going to do? And with this type of thing, especially if you are building this for yourself and you need to have it ready for a gig, a service, a rehearsal. Yep. You just got to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so that's where shameless plug, that's where the Facebook group, Chairmen of the Boards, comes in handy. Bring some of these problems there and bring them to the group. And chances are someone has experienced something like it before. Yep. And we can all try and help each other out. Yeah. So do you have any, or I guess at this point, Brian, we should probably throw to an ad, shouldn't we? Chat about some of the sponsors that make this show possible.
We probably should.
The ads are short. We have 3 great sponsors that a lot of the gear that we chat about on the show is available at these sponsors, especially the one at the end for some of this troubleshooting stuff that we're talking about. So check out the sponsors. We will be right back with another question that you guys tend to ask on a repetitive type of basis. So something I'm really excited to chat about. First, let's go to an ad.
We will get right back to the episode, but before we do, I want to tell you about one of the sponsors that makes this podcast possible every single week. It is our friends over at the Guitar Sanctuary in McKinney, Texas. Now, not only do they have one of the premier guitar stores in all of Texas, but they also have an amazing website where you're able to get practically anything that you hear us talking about during any Chairman of the Boards episode. Whether it's boutique guitars, amps, pedals, or more mainstream brands, they have it all there, and they have the service and staff to make it happen. So head over to our friends over at the Guitar Sanctuary, guitarsanctuary.com. Tell them the Chairman sent you.
All right, let's talk about the biggest news in the recent guitar world, which ironically comes in a smaller package. The guys over at Neural DSP have released the Quad Cortex Mini. For years, we've been putting the Quad Cortex on pedalboards and racks, and now they have made it a little bit easier for us by shrinking it almost 50% smaller. We aren't talking about the light version here. It's the exact same processing muscle and capturing technology, just with that gorgeous 7-inch screen, a couple less foot switches, but still packs a punch. All right, my plugin people, if you utilize these on a daily, this is basically the holy grail of plugins, the John Mayer X plugin. This isn't just a tribute. They went to his house, they captured these amps, and they're giving them to you in this small package that you can take anywhere you want. If you're wanting to upgrade your board or your DAW, head over to Neural DSP right now. Use the code Chairman to get 30% off all of your plugins.
If you're listening to this episode halfway through building your pedal board, you need to check out Bestronix, also known as BTPA. This is the place to go to get all of the remaining plugs, jacks, cable, maybe even patch bays or looms to help you finish building your rig and building it the right way the first time. Brad at Bestronix is here to help you guys find the right parts for your unique pedal board and to also get you these parts at a discount. Use the code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, to get 10% off your order at btpa.com. Tell them the Chairman sent you.
Love those sponsors.
They're good.
They are great. They are great.
And we use them often. I feel like we haven't chatted about Brad, I feel like, as much recently here, but I send Brad essentially a weekly email ordering more stuff. And there's always something that needs to be updated or whatever, stocked up on. And so I emailed Brad a lot. And we recently had Ryan from Neural on the podcast.
Yep.
And then, of course, Guitar Sanctuary right in your area there. Amazing shop.
I was just there. Events. Yeah, I was just there a couple days ago, and it was. I always tell my wife whenever I go there, I'm like, I'll be really quick. I'll be like, I'll drive there 20 minutes down the road. I'll be there for maybe half an hour and I'll leave. And she looks at me, she's like, I'll see you in like 3 hours. And it ends up.
She just knows.
She knows. Well, it's because I'll talk to one group of guys and I'll talk to other group of guys, and then the owner will walk in and we'll end up talking, and then it's just a whole. And then we're like, I had this idea. Oh, I had this idea, and it's just it's such a fun time to get there. And then I'm like, all right, what's new? And as you can see from the videos, the store is packed full of gear.
It's a great place. I haven't been there in person, I have to say. I've only heard from you and seen videos, but I dream of making the trip to Mecca, as they call it, the Guitar Sanctuary, the Mecca of Texas. So, next question.
Yes.
There's one that actually, a couple that have kind of in the same area have come up in the chat, which I feel like I would love to pivot to, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. I was the same.
Grounding issues from Bo and Hunty Boo.
Let's do it.
This is one of the hair pulling moments, I would say, if you're in rigs, which if you're building rigs is let's generalize and call it extra noise you weren't expecting, which is different, often, not always, different than ground loops. And ground loops are noise in your rigs and your audio lines. But you can get noise in your rig so many different ways. And this is why it's one of those things that's frustrating, is because you can get noise at different venues that you weren't getting in the previous venue. Or at home, it's quiet, and then you go to a venue and it's noisy. And so you kind of have to have some tricks up your sleeve to know how to troubleshoot this stuff. And so one of my big things, and I would love to hear what you say here, Brian, around what you tell customers. Like, I kind of have a default starting point when it comes to because this is such a common question. As again, shameless little plug, but I think it'll actually be helpful. I wrote a blog on this a year and a bit ago, all the ways that you can get noise in your rig on our website.
Yeah.
Because it comes up so much, I just told people, read this blog and tell me where you sit here. I would say the most common thing I get people to do out of the gate is if they're running multiple lines, or they're running 4 cable method where they're going back and forth to an amp with effects in an effects loop, then I'm basically just trying to get a sense for their rig. So let's say they're running a stereo rig to 2 tube amps. The first thing I get them to do is unplug one of the amps, so they're only running to 1. Is the noise still there? No, the noise went away. Okay, then run the other output that you just unplugged to an amp. Is the noise there? No. Only when I'm running 2 lines into 2 amps do I have a noise. That points to a ground loop. So now you need to isolate the ground on one of your amps. Mm-hmm. If the answer is no to that, like in the sense of, if they go to 1 amp and there's still noise, then I get them to turn the volume pot on their guitar off at the noisy venue. If the noise disappears when you pull your guitar volume pot off, that means your pickups are now out of the signal chain, and chances are you might have some lighting, a transformer, some sort of interference with your passive pickups that are adding noise into your rig. That is a little bit more frustrating, because you're kind of now looking into like a noise gate, which is, in my opinion, a very handy tool, but unfortunate if you have to use one. Yep. Because now you're gating your signal, and now there's a threshold, which means you have to play loud enough to clear that threshold. And there's all these, it's just not as ideal if that's the case. So in that instance, I would say at that venue, try bringing humbuckers, and they'll help mitigate that noise issue that you have. Mm-hmm. And then there's a number of other issues that you can run into as well. Ground loops being probably one of the most solvable ones with an audio transformer. What would you typically tell people, Brian? Someone says, I got noise in my rig. What am I supposed to do now? Is there kind of a way that you approach this, or questions you like to ask or anything like that?
Yeah, I typically just tell them throw it in the garbage. I was just like, throw it away. Just walk away.
Just let me set up a new rig for you.
I'm just buy an RP50 from Digitech. Just don't even mess. Yeah. Just don't.
Have you ever considered bass? Piano, maybe.
Have you ever considered just singing? Oh, you can't sing? Oh, the triangle it is then. That sucker had no strings attached. No, I've had a couple of them, and a lot of times I start off with the question is, how are you powering it? What are you doing? The junction box? And are you connected to a computer? Those are like the 3 questions I always ask, because those are the types of things that will tell me right away things to unplug and to try to go direct into. Brian will tell me to turn off my LEDs. Yeah, I would tell you to turn off your LEDs
also
if
true.
you had LEDs. If you know me, I'm not a fan of the LEDs underneath. That's just me. But it's like checking those types of things. But if you like the LEDs, that's your own thing. I'm looking at the screen this way, so it's weird that my camera's over here today. But I'm looking at the comments over here. But I definitely have a list of those questions I'll ask, and then it's a matter of, like you just said, it's a matter of troubleshooting certain things along the way to say, okay, well, that didn't fix it, so let's try this. And a lot of times it comes down to, I'm like, hey, unplug these things and only plug in this way and tell me. So it's kind of like when you have a bad patch cable, you can troubleshoot certain things, and a lot of times it ends up being, so I'm like, oh, I plugged in my amp into the light strip with the lighting and stuff like that. So like there's little things, it kind of just changes and kind of just depends. So it really, it all comes down to their setup, because not every setup is the exact same thing. So it's not all, not rigs are all not the same or whatever. Not one rig is the same. So you're going to have plenty of things, but those are typically the things I always suggest starting with from there. And then from there, you can kind of go and little by little and figure out, and especially the one most troublesome ones, and I'm sorry if I'm very over the place with this question, is because it's not a single answer.
So many things.
So if I sound sporadic, or I don't really sound like I'm being articulating exactly, because it's not one thing. It's not like my arm is broken. Oh, maybe my arm's broken. It's just like, there's so many. There's such a stupid analogy, but I feel like there's so many things involved in this that could be the issue. It's like my son, he's 8. Dad, my stomach hurts. So I'll use that analogy. Dad, my stomach hurts. Okay, well, did you eat dinner? No. Okay, what did you have to eat? Well, I ate 18 chocolate bars. Oh, okay, that might be. Also, I ate a pitcher of Kool-Aid. Okay, well, those are 3 things that could possibly be the issue. So it's the same, that's your dad analogy for the day, so welcome to my life. But like that's kind of when it comes to with this kind of stuff, is you have to start going, hey, these are the ABCs of my rig. Could it be any of these? No? Okay, well, has it happened at home? No. Where has it only happened? It's only happened at my church, or it's only ever happened at this hole-in-the-wall bar that I'm playing at. It's like, okay, well, then there's a good chance it could be something power-related. Oh, yeah, well, now that you mention it, I am plugging into a power strip that's also powering the air conditioning and powering the fans and all of our LED lights and our strobe lights and our playback system and all these things that you're going, well, is there a power conditioner or a rack or something you can plug into that you can have a little bit better power? And a lot of times you're like, oh yeah, I can actually just run a longer power cable. Great, do that. So, and a lot of times it fixes it. It's the ones when they're like, I have the noise at home, but then I don't at church. I'm like, well, then that's your home system that you got to figure out.
Venue related.
Yeah, it really just depends. Yeah. Not the environments. Not every environment's going to be exactly the same every single time.
And the question from Hunty Boo here is as well around noise and clock noise with MIDI. Yeah. I don't know if you have any instances that come to mind with clock noise on MIDI, but I know for me, typically, and again, there's no one size fits all here, but if I have an issue with MIDI clock noise, I am checking power first on the power supply. Yep. That maybe it's a power supply I'm less familiar with, that some power supplies these days will say isolated power supply, especially the cheaper ones. And there are maybe two sections that are isolated from each other, but they have 5 taps each, and they're not actually isolated power supplies. I'll check power. I will check the MIDI cables. Oftentimes the MIDI cable was made incorrectly. Obviously not by me. Someone else would have done it.
Tyler.
I'll check the MIDI cables. And then if that still doesn't fix the issue, then, and this goes for audio as well, is yes, Walrus power is great. If I'm still having issues from there, let's say I'm using a MIDI controller, Morningstar MC6 Pro, and I have 3 things in my MIDI chain, I will go MC6 Pro, I will send it out to MIDI pedal 1 and disconnect everything else, and I'll test, do I have clock noise? And then hopefully at this point the answer is no. And then I'll plug in number 1 and 2 to MIDI and audio, and then I'll recheck. And then 1, 2, and 3, and I'll see where the issue comes up. You can check things like the MIDI settings on each pedal, that they're all set to through. You can make sure that your if you did have noise from just the MIDI controller to pedal 1, I would say this for me is extremely rare. I can't even think of a case where this has happened. But I would be looking strongly at the cable and swapping out the cable. I would say, last thing I'll throw to you, Brian, on what you've had here, but the biggest issues I've had when it comes to MIDI is when I should be using an isolated MIDI splitter, but I'm not. So I have, let's say I'm running MC6 Pro MIDI controller. I'm going out to a timeline. I'm going out to a Big Sky. And by way of, because I'm trying to save complexity or anything like that, I make a custom cable that's going to a MIDI pedal with a TRS MIDI Type A input. It's usually that last pedal that will give me some issues, depending on what it is. Strymon can be a little picky. Chase Bliss can be a little bit picky on their TRS 1/4 inch MIDI jacks.
Yeah.
And so I'm usually looking there, and that tends to be the giveaway. What do you think, Brian? And I'll read the comments here as you're going, but are there any issues that you kind of get in this realm as well, and what have you done to fix them?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, and he even, Hunty Boo even said it, narrowed it down to the MIDI cables coming out of the disaster area box. I've actually had some other companies, which I don't even think they make the MIDI boxes anymore. It was the MIDI box, like the DIN,
100%.
the TRS. It was like, it wasn't even isolated. So then they were all cross-talking, causing the issue. And it was like one of those, like, I think ironically
Strymon
enough,
can be picky for this.
Strymon can be, yes.
The 1/4 inch MIDI can be picky for isolation.
I've talked to a couple companies about this. I'm like, listen, I know it's not glamorous. I know it's not super hot. It's not one of those things. I was like, but someone needs to design. And I was like, it needs to design these types of things. And they're like, oh, that's just so easy. And I was like, I understand it's easy, but that's the thing, is like, sometimes you just need to make the easy stuff to make it easy on us. So the MIDI box has definitely been the culprit a couple of times. I had the Strymon one. It actually gave me an issue on a couple things. The one way I got around, I was actually had an issue with, I was going out of the Strymon into an H90, and I ended up getting a really weird ticking noise. And I was like, that's not typical. As soon as I unplugged the MIDI, the ticking noise went away. So I had to start brainstorming ideas, and I ended up having to open up the RJM, the output, because the PBC6X is a Y cable. So the fact, it's in and out. So I had to wire 2 cables to the outs, one going to the MIDI box, one going to the H9. And that fixed it. Sorry, the more I talk, the more I have to cough. So I do, again, apologize. But that's what I would say. I would say a lot of times you just have to do the research. Don't get the super cheap ones. I want to throw back really quick when you're talking about isolated power supplies. If Amazon is selling a $29 power supply and it says isolated, do not believe them.
Make sure isolated is spelled correctly, not with a Z. Not isolated. Isolated.
If it's EYE-salated, it's not. So I've had people that have told me that kind of stuff before, and I'm just like, that will tell you right there. So
Yeah.
I'll stop talking before I absolutely lose my voice. But I would say
Yeah.
that right there that's a big one right there is a MIDI box. And sometimes you don't need the MIDI boxes depending. I think it kind of depends. Like, don't get a MIDI box if you're only doing one DIN to TRS. Like, you can get a converter cable. You don't need a box.
And again, Hunty Boo, just super active in the chat today,
Thank
and I'm
you.
grateful for you. The reminded me that I did in that article. So the MIDI standard. Let's say you have a typical 5-pin MIDI input, MIDI out or through on a pedal, like a Timeline has the 2 5-pin DIN jacks on it for MIDI. The MIDI standard is that the inputs are optically isolated. So it's kind of like an audio transformer for your MIDI chain. Very good. So you're separating grounds, you're optically isolating everything. That's the way it should be. So when you're running a chain of MIDI 5-pin DIN pedals, Mobius, Timeline, Big Sky into H9, the chance of you getting this clock noise should be next to nil. Like it should be almost impossible because it's all properly isolated. But when you do these MIDI boxes, this applies off the top of my head to the Morningstar MIDI box, the Disaster Area MIDI box, I believe the RJM multi box, but I could be wrong on that one. I feel like I talked to Ron about this at one point. All of these, they will isolate the 5-pin MIDI in, but nothing else is isolated from itself.
Mm-hmm.
So all of, like on the Morningstar MIDI box, the 8 outputs plus the 5-pin DIN output, those are all on the same ground. They're sharing a ground. And when you are sending to pedals like Strymon, we'll pick on Strymon today a little bit. And this is not a fault of theirs. This is a fault of the feature sets that people are asking for. When you have any 1/4-inch input that can do more than one thing. So it can do MIDI input. It can do an external pedal input. It can do expression input, all on the one jack. And then you decide what you want that to do. That's a little hint of them saying, this is not an optically isolated input because it does more than one thing. You can't optically isolate that input for expression while also having it be a MIDI input. And so now you are opening yourself up to potential ground issues and clock noise if you're sharing this all in the same ground. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And that's where, if you're just aware of that, then you're like, okay, so now we're getting an issue here with the ground and the issues that we're kind of coming across here. So that's where I wonder if you feel the same here, Brian. I'm trying to think. I don't think we've ever had an issue in any of our shops with Strymon when we've used conduit. It's an expensive piece of gear, but it's their MIDI splitter. I haven't had issues with it. We use the Morningstar MIDI box a lot, and the amount of issues we had are very minimal, and nothing that comes to mind over the past year. But it can happen, and that's where I would have things up my sleeve, extra little pieces of gear in the shop, like that Strymon. They make a cable that is a 5-pin in to it has a little oval egg-shaped thing in the middle of the cable. Then it goes to a 1/4-inch out. And that little oval in the middle is an optically isolated through. So if I ever run into issues, like, well, here's a troubleshooting cable I can pop into the chain. Does the noise go away when I use this instead of the TRS cable from the MIDI box or whatever it may be? And most of the time, that's the fix. I'm like, okay, we have a grounding issue here. And we can troubleshoot from that point on. I think Mason mentioned that he's floated the ground on some of these cables from time to time, and that's fixed issues. I haven't had to do that yet. We've always had other ways of working around it, but you can also try floating a ground and seeing what happens to your noise issues from that point on. But I feel like I need to look into that more before I wholeheartedly recommend it. But there's a few things like that you can give a shot with as well.
No, I agree. I think someone had even said it about the Morningstar box is isolated. I said in an article you said you believed it was.
Which one, sorry? This was the Disaster Area box and the Morningstar MIDI box. The input, the 5-pin input, isolates from everything that comes before and from the 5-pin out after. But all of the TRS outputs, plus, as far as I understand, the 5-pin DIN output, those all share one ground.
Yeah.
So as soon as you plug in more than one pedal to one of those outputs, now you have pedals sharing a ground, and they're not optically isolated on the MIDI chain. And so it's just something to be aware of. That was news to me a few years ago. I thought they were isolated. Each individual output was isolated, and I was wrong. So that's something to, definitely be aware of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely something that you don't want to get too complex. I think there's a lot of great little units out there. It's definitely doing the research to know this kind of stuff, because there is a lot of different boxes out there that can do stuff, that attempt to do it, especially older ones with like the jumper stuff. I typically will stay away from those. You just have issues. But Grant, in our final couple moments we have here, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to instill some wisdom to all of our friends out there today?
Well, Hunty Booze just said that my article said the Morningstar one, I said it did isolate, and I can tell you why I said that. I emailed Morningstar asking that exact question about disaster area, and they said, yep, ours isolates the input from the outputs and all this, or I can't remember how they worded it. They worded it in such a way where it sounded like the outputs were all isolated. Then I went back and clarified a year later when we had a noise issue, and turns out they just isolate the input like everyone else. So thank you for pointing that out. I will change the article because I was not aware that was in there after all this time that I've not been writing that article. Final things from me. I mean, I love this type of episode because I feel like this is the type of stuff that will say, like, this is the type of thing that if Chairman of the Boards or there's so many other great guitar podcasts out there, if I was listening to this stuff 10 years ago, I would have saved so many stressful late nights because of it. Just all these little things that come up. So I would say the words of wisdom here is you will not encounter a problem on a pedal board that is unsolvable or that there is not a way around. Sometimes you may have to make changes you didn't want to make, but the problems are solvable. Ask some questions in the Chairman group. Ask questions here on live chat. We're on YouTube on the Chairman of the Boards channel if you're listening on a podcast player instead after the fact. So if you have questions, hop on and ask questions here as well. The Facebook group, Chairman of the Boards. But I would say if this is something you absolutely love doing, there will be very frustrating days, but there are enough people around that have made enough dumb mistakes, myself being one of them. I've made all the dumb mistakes you can make, and I have more yet to come. I promise you that. And I am more than happy to share. I'm more than happy to try and save you some heartache if I can along the way, if you can learn from my mistakes. So I would say the biggest thing is just know that there's a whole bunch of people out here that just love chatting about this stuff and glean from their knowledge, learn from their mistakes, and your life will be just a little bit less stressful because of it. I would say that's the biggest thing. But, man, this stuff is fun. If you're into it, it's so much fun. And I think there's just a ton to be learned here. And as the gear changes, so do the lessons, and so do the best practices and all this stuff that kind of goes along with it. So what would you add here, Brian, to finish out the episode today?
Yeah, with all this kind of stuff, I was telling someone about it the other day. They were putting together a board. They didn't test the configuration. They just wired it up, and they were gonna hope it was gonna work. And I think a big thing is just test that kind of stuff out. Test out the chain before you put it together, before you send it to be wired up. Make sure you're happy with it. Make sure you're happy with that placement. Obviously, if you have a switcher that can move loops, a little bit different situation, but make sure you're happy with the sounds before you lock that kind of stuff in. Otherwise, you're gonna be in for some late nights or some what the heck is going on? Why am I getting this buzzing noise? And you're gonna find out it's a USB-C cable. So I think it just kind of take your time. If you're in a rush, well, people always say when you start rushing at things, you start making mistakes. So just take your time, have fun, and go read Grant's article if you have any other issues with noise issues.
Mistakes and all. I would say as well, like with that, it's really easy to think in the beginning planning stages, like I got to get moving. I'll waste time if I test all this. Yeah. And sure enough, I promise you at the end, or like you're 75% of the way through the build.
Yeah.
And then you realize if I would have just spent half an hour testing things,
yep,
I would have saved 3 right now,
Yep.
and the amount of rework you have to do and all this stuff by rushing. It's front load the planning on your next setup, and you will get a better result with better sounds, making more use of your gear because of it. I guarantee it. It's something I still have to remind myself about as well. But yeah, great episode, Brian. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Someone recommended, asking about cable tester, recommended, I'll throw a thing. I did do a video recently on tools and stuff, and I do recommend a couple cable testers in there, so check that out. But next time, guys, hopefully my voice is back. The pollen.
It's added a sexy rasp
Man,
to the podcast that was missing. I think this is the key right here.
It's something. It's definitely one of my. I walked out and both of our cars were yellow, and they are not yellow cars, and the pollen was strong.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
well, thanks guys. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
Bye guys.